So, American Fiction is the story of Thelonious Ellison, a black writer who is frustrated with the state of African American literature. It's a modern story. Thelonious is a writer who's written a few novels that isn't getting really any recognition, and meanwhile, he's having some struggles at home. His mom is losing her memory, and his brother is disparate and has his own family troubles across the country and doesn't talk to him. And his sister, meanwhile, is trying to take care of mom. And on top of all that, upon going to a book signing one day, he realizes that nobody is coming to check out his books. Nobody wants to keep up with what Thelonious Ellison is doing. So he goes across the street where he sees Issa Rae playing a character Sintara Golden, who's just written a black novel called We Lives in the Ghetto. She does a reading, and it is the most, to him, stereotypical black story full of racial stereotypes that people just seem to eat up. It's a bestseller, right? People love it. White culture loves it. They feel like it fits into everything that they believe black culture to be, and he can't stand it. So, in need of funds and struggling at home, one night he pens a novel, or I guess an early draft, called My Pathology, under the ghostwriter named Stag R. Lee. And he sends it to his publicist, and his publicist sends it out, and it immediately becomes a hit. White publicists everywhere grab it, and they want to sign a Hollywood deal, and they want to make it this huge thing and order 1 million copies, and it becomes what's supposed to be his most successful work. And suddenly, our lead, Thelonious, begins to become everything he disdains in writing. Thelonious is played brilliantly by Jeffrey Wright. It's a fantastic cast all around. Film's directed by Cord Jefferson, and it is an adaptation of a book, and I feel terrible that I can't recall what exactly that book title is, but I will get it in just a second. In the meantime, like I said, I'm the only one that managed to go see this because we had some weird screening times, but notably what I wanted to say is this film is nominated for a few Academy Awards, notably Best Picture and Best Score, which is an understated score and our only female composer. Really good stuff. Actually worth mentioning. A lot of jazz, a lot of piano, very freewheeling. But it's odd because it's a very dry film, very dry humor, and about a very challenging time in somebody's life when their family, their parent is losing their memory, right? And you have to learn how to take them to living in some kind of like full-time senior assisted living center. And you have to coordinate with your siblings about how that's going to work and who's going to pay for it. And you have to take time away from your life to take care of others. And it ends up being a much larger story than what's in the trailer, which on its face totally just looks like a fun story about a writer who gets frustrated and writes a novel that completely misrepresents them and ends up having a lot of success with it, and then being kind of hanging on to that comet by the tail for as long as they can until ideally it all blows up in their face. I don't want to say it's underrepresented in the trailer, but like I said, it's like it shows 30 or 40% of the movie. All the family stuff is left out on the back end, and being a 2-hour feature, that's most of your runtime. And while it's meaningful, it ends up feeling a lot like two almost separate films. It's like whimsical fun bit about the publishing industry and the struggles of writing and visualizing characters in front of you. And then also like really struggling with the stage of life that not a lot of people talk about. It's uniquely intelligent and uniquely adult and uniquely human. And that's really unique. And I'm really glad I got to go see it. So I did want to mention a bit of the cast in here, but while I catch my breath, Andy, any questions, any thoughts on American Fiction?
So I know that Sterling K. Brown is nominated for Best Supporting Actor. What is his role in this, and how is he in this film?
Yeah, so Sterling K. Brown actually plays a really interesting role in this film. Really quick, our cast for what's here is, like I said, we have Jeffrey Wright as Thelonious Ellison, or Monk as they call him in the film. Thelonious Monk, obviously a joke on writing. Tracy Ellis Ross plays his sister, Lisa Ellison, who's taking care of their mom, Leslie Uggams, who plays Agnes. And the brother, Sterling K. Brown, is our distant brother. He lives across the country. He is an oncologist, I think. His wife is not talking to him. His kids can't stand him. And he's just very recently come out as gay. And he has a lot of problems. He's got a lot of problems in this movie. And they just slowly become more apparent as we meet him. He actually flies into town over the course of the months where this film would take place. While it is a 2-hour feature, it takes place over long periods of time. He flies into town 3 times over the course of this movie. And he is struggling at home. And it's funny because Thelonious' odd fake story written by his ghostwriter character here, Staggar Lee, is stereotypical like hood rat stuff, man. Like it's about people living in the ghetto and struggling and shooting each other up, right? And having babies. And meanwhile, like the black stories that are actually in the film are about a struggling black writer and his brother, a struggling gay oncologist, like with a family who won't talk to him and is kind of struggling to find himself and figure out how to let people in. He's aggressive and he's over the top, but he's hilarious. Sterling K. Brown is wildly underrated in this feature. Obviously, he's getting his comeuppance with some awards buzz. Issa Rae, also a ton of fun, is Centara Golden, this kind of opposing writer for Jeffrey Wright's Thelonious, this woman who's come in and written this story that he deems like terrible, right? He's like, oh God, how could you write that junk? Actually, even much better when a bit of the ways into the film, Thelonious is selected to be a judge on a panel of like an awards panel for best writing for the year, and he's placed opposite Centara, and the two of them end up collaborating directly together on selecting works for the year that they think are worth mentioning. And they have a really, really fantastic scene towards the end where the two of them have this really frank conversation about, hey, how do you feel about writing something that like the culture sees as so wildly stereotypical? Like, is that okay? Like, what exactly are we perpetuating by putting these stories at the front? And is it okay to put these stories in front of an audience that believes them to be true, even if they're not, you know? Like, that's all really meaningful. And I think that plays really well alongside the very honest stories in the film of, again, struggling black writer, struggling gay oncologist, and also like Jeffrey Wright's mother in the film who's losing her memory. Like the family at home is like very much having their own problems. And like that plays opposite really well, like the kind of comedy stuff. It's just, again, feels a little disparate. Now, I should say it didn't work as well for me, but obviously it works for somebody. It's the Best Picture nom. Clearly a lot of people connected with this. And like I said, I think it's the kind of film I'm going to be thinking about when I'm older and maybe working through that stage of life with my parents, because it feels really sincere and really honest. I know director Cord Jefferson wrote the screenplay for this. So obviously they've got like a very direct connection with it. But I think like this cast manages to come together and really elevate the work. The problem is like the only really fun parts are the writing stuff, and there's almost not enough of it for me. Like that's the one thing. In a 2-hour runtime, like the trailer barely shows what 70% of the movie really is, like most trailers, I guess. But
Yeah.
it almost feels misaligned. Like they really wanted to show the fun stuff up front, and there's so much more going on here. Like there's such a more thoughtful conversation. Yeah.
So, so this has been nominated for several Academy Awards. Do you feel like it's kind of deserving, or it's earned those? Because like from the trailers, this looked like a movie that would come out in September. It's a safe, cheap, feel good thing.
Yeah.
Not big enough for summer. Not really Oscar baity material either.
It's a good question because I don't know. Like I guess best way to say this, I didn't know exactly what it was nominated for before I went in. I was driving to the theater and thinking, hey, I should probably look up what it's nominated for. I thought, no. I'm going to watch the movie first, then I'm going to come out, then I'm going to check Oscar nominations. I was genuinely surprised to see it on Best Picture. Now, I know Best Picture gets up to 10 noms, like, so it's fine. I don't think it all worked for me and spoke to me in the way that it seems to have spoken to a lot of the members of the Academy. Like, I know it's kind of a broad category. Like, clearly it's worked. Like, somebody seems to really be into it. I didn't quite get over for me, but the stuff I did like, again, all of the writing content, like all of the publishing stuff, all of the struggles of being a writer who feels like their voice isn't heard and trying to have the confidence to continue working and working through writer's block. Like all of that felt really meaningful. All of that felt really funny. All of that felt really whimsical. All that stuff in the trailer, all that stuff works great. The rest of it, I mean, shoot, like it must be good, right? Critics agree. Washington Post, that was the best picture of the year. They put it right there on the poster. So it's a surprise for me. That being said, soundtrack is understated. I should say that. Its composer is, I should have this down, and I don't. Who's our composer? Laura Cartman, notably the only female composer, like I said, on the list of best scores this year. While I don't know if it'll win best score, it's a good one. I was actually looking forward to Andy catching it at some point so we could talk about it. It's a good score, very different, very inventive. Otherwise, I don't know. Like it feels good to me, but it doesn't feel great. I will
what's
say,
the recommendation? What's the recommendation?
The recommendation. If you are a dry humorist, you like dry humor. You're somebody who likes New Yorker articles, right? Like you're somebody who likes to think of themselves as maybe a little high and mighty when it comes to the media they consume. I think this is the perfect picture for you because our lead, Jeffrey Wright's Thelonious, is exactly that person. He kind of sees himself not necessarily in an ivory tower, but a little bit above, I think, like the problems that so much of the people around him face. And it's humbling for him to have to go home and struggle with that with his family. And it's uniquely hilarious to see the publishing industry cast in such a harsh light because it is really funny, him dealing with his publicist who's like, come on, man, I know you think it's trash. Let's send it out anyway. Maybe it'll be a hit. And then when it is a hit, well, yeah, of course you think it's trash. But if other people like, like the ways we convince ourselves that like the art we produce is worthy, even though we don't see it ourselves, is really tremendous. And I think American Fiction has a lot to say that way. I think it's a great work by Cord Jefferson. I really enjoyed it. Honestly, I'd recommend. I do. I think I'd recommend American Fiction, but it's dry. It's dry, man. And that's okay. It's dry funny, but it's dry. So if you know what you're getting into and you're looking forward to it, I think American Fiction's worth your time. I don't know when it'll be coming to streaming services, but that's probably where I'd recommend it. Not exactly a cinematic masterpiece. You're not seeing sweeping vistas and insane camera lenses. And that's okay. Like, it doesn't have to be. I think it uses the medium of film to adapt the story from the book in a way that is uniquely satisfying. Jeffrey Wright's hilarious. Yeah, I'd recommend, I think. And that's American Fiction. I'm glad I got to see it, especially opposite Madam Web, a film that I was not super into. Now, we're going to talk about one more film this week on the podcast, a different mini review, a film Andy has seen, and he's happy to report on. Andy, please take it away.
Naiad